Big story on page 3 in the National Post today, and apparently in 100 other newspapers across Canada. That's how it is in the news business these days. They're really just wire services that repeat the same thing all across the country. I couldn't find a hard copy of the National Post in Toronto. I swear I drove up and down the street, went to so many convenience stores. You really can't find a copy of it. At least I couldn't. I didn't go to a specialty store. I would have liked to have seen it because the image I saw online looks sort of cool. You can see the headline. The paper headline was, Levant argues minister violated charter rights. Here's the website version with a different headline, which is Liberal minister breached charter by blocking Rebel News chief on Twitter. Legal challenge. The case is raising novel questions about government use of a social media platform, often called a digital public square. Now, there's a lot of news in the article. It's actually very long. And as far as the news goes, it's pretty good. But there's so much snark in there that's just so obviously gratuitous pot shots. But it was the second most read story in the National Post today, which makes me laugh sometimes. I mean, we cover very interesting and we do very interesting things at Rebel News, and we are obviously watched obsessively by the media party, but they either can't or won't talk about what we talk about. They're simply not allowed to. But when they do, like today, it goes viral. I think that's a quirky thing. So let me read to you the story from Tom Blackwell, who obviously doesn't like us, but can't stop watching us. By the way, he never contacted me for the story, which is, I think, unprofessional. I should tell you the text of the online version, I think it may have changed a little bit throughout the day. I'm going to read to you the final version, which I think he actually had some of the snark taken out of it. It happens every day. Someone on Twitter gets fed up with criticism or abuse from another user of the social media platform and blocks the person from their feed. But what if the Twitter account belongs to a federal cabinet minister and jamming the other individual essentially cuts off access to a form of government communication? It's a good question. Actually, I think that's a pretty good summary of our lawsuit, isn't it? That question is at the heart of an intriguing constitutional challenge by right-wing provocateur Ezra Levant, who alleges that Environment Minister Steven Guilbeault violated his constitutional right to free expression when he Twitter blocked the Rebel News head. Levant called Guilbeault a convicted criminal. Yeah, he is. Incompetent and stupid. Yes, I did. In responding to the minister's post on Twitter, no, that's actually not accurate, and I'll prove that in a minute, but says he had a right to follow and comment on the minister. His application to the federal court says Section 2B of the Charter, which guarantees free expression and freedom of the press, also protects access to government information in order that meaningful discussion about it is possible. You know, there's a lot of reasons why we deserve access to Steven Guilbeault's Twitter account. I want to make it crystal clear before I go on. I'm not talking about any personal accounts, like his personal family account or a private account for friends. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the government cabinet minister run by, his office run by civil servants and political staff, all on the taxpayer dime, using that Twitter account as a official outlet of the government. That's what I'm talking about. Just to be clear, I don't care about his personal life. I care about, in fact, I don't even care about him. I care about him only in the fact that he occupies the office of a cabinet minister. And especially when we launched the lawsuit, that cabinet minister was the Minister of Heritage who had power over media companies like ours and people like me. I'll keep reading. The case has yet to get a full hearing in court, but already is raising novel questions about government use of a social media platform, often called a digital public square. Fred Kozak, a leading Alberta media lawyer who has acted both for and against Levant, said I don't remember Fred acting against me, but I'll take the newspaper's word for it, said he doesn't always agree with Rebel's opinions or tactics, but believes there's merit to the Twitter argument. Thanks, Fred. The courts have interpreted the free expression section as a bundle of rights that covers more than just actual expression, he said. I don't think you can identify and use a communications and access mechanism and then deny access to someone who disagrees with your perspective, said Kozak. That is not how democracies are supposed to operate. Fred's pretty smart, by the way. He represents so many media companies. He was our lawyer, just to remind you, when the NDP government of Alberta banned Sheila Gunn Reid from walking in the legislature. I don't know if you remember that. They literally sent a sheriff with a gun to keep Sheila out. Fred was our lawyer who got us back in. Here's that video clip if you've forgotten about it.
Do you have accreditation for
my,
today's event?
I have my, we already spoke to Darcy Henton. He said
Yeah.
there should be no problem to come in. What? Sorry, why is that? Sorry, why?
Fred is a champion of journalists. It's just a fact. Journalists across the spectrum, by the way. In fact, I understand he represents the National Post sometimes. Let me get back to the story. But Levant's own behavior might pose some obstacles in the case, says lawyer Kara Zwiebel, director of the Fundamental Freedoms Program at the Canadian Civil Liberties Association. Oh, really? What behavior is that? I've never been suspended or banned from Twitter. I extremely rarely even swear on the platform. I've never sworn at Steven Guilbeault. I don't threaten to harass anyone. What on earth are you talking about? I'll keep reading. On the face of it, what Guilbeault did seems to violate freedom of expression, she said, noting that courts in the U.S. ruled President Donald Trump and other politicians had breached America's similar First Amendment by blocking certain Twitter users. But the right in Canada is not as absolute, and courts here may rule that online abuse is a legitimate reason for a government representative to block someone, said Zwiebel. What are you talking about? No one has ever accused me of online abuse. Criticizing a powerful government using peaceful language of protest is not abuse, you strange civil libertarian. I'll keep reading. The Charter allows some violations if they're deemed a reasonable limitation on the right. There is a strong argument that public officials have an obligation to communicate in a way that is open to people to respond to, she said. Elected officials have to have a bit of a thick skin and be prepared to deal with the criticism, but there is a point where the line gets crossed and personal attacks and harassment. What are you talking about? I've never harassed anyone in my life. It's pitiful. She made that up. I called him a convicted criminal. I don't even know if that's an attack. That's a description. It's true. He was convicted. I don't know if you remember. He was a Greenpeace criminal convicted in court. Is mentioning that a cabinet minister is a criminal? I think that's very newsworthy. In fact, not only do I think it's not abuse, I think I have a duty as a journalist to mention that. That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest, either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. You know, we rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.